Hello and welcome to the first episode of ReWrite, a series where I'll be taking you through some of my favourite games and films and changing them, or rewriting them. Throughout these rewrites I'll be using ideas that didn't quite make the final cut of the original game or film, and a few of my own ideas to spice things up a little. For the first episode we'll be taking on Batman Arkham Asylum. Batman games up until 2009 were lacklustre at best, with the games never really hitting the blistering heights everyone expected a game to be, based on one of the most interesting characters in comic book history. Batman deserved more than 2D renditions of Tim Burton's movies, and trust me, there were plenty of them. And he certainly deserved more than whatever the hell Batman Dark Tomorrow was. I mean, seriously, what is that? LEGO took a crack at making a family-friendly version of the character in block form, and succeeded very well with LEGO Batman in 2008. And as of writing this, LEGO Batman's actually the fourth best-selling superhero game of all time. So, further cementing LEGO's legacy as the greatest toy ever. The same year as LEGO Batman was released, a British-based studio, who at this point were relatively unknown, would announce Batman Arkham Asylum. With iconic voice actors like Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill and Arlene Sorkin returning to their parts from the heavily praised Batman the Animated Series, the game already had a huge leg up in terms of legitimacy among fans. Paul Dini was also on board to write the story, so this just added another notch to Asylum's belt. Batman Arkham Asylum would release on the 25th of August 2009, and as the world entered the asylum for the first time, it realised that this wasn't another cookie-cutter superhero disaster. This was special. Arkham Asylum was different. The atmosphere, character design and music by Nick Arundel really made the asylum feel as if it was this uncharted and haunted island that happened to have an asylum on it. Arkham Asylum would let the world rejoice that finally the Caped Crusader had been done justice in video game form. Still praised to this day as the godfather of the genre, Arkham Asylum was and still is one of the finest superhero games ever released. And I'm here to ruin that. Now we know a little bit about Arkham Asylum, let's begin the rewrite. But just before we get into chopping and changing one of the greatest stories in video game history, let's look at what we're working with. And if you already know the story of Arkham Asylum, skip to whatever timestamp is on the screen now and just get straight in to the good stuff. Because obviously the actual story is not the good stuff, my rewrite's the good stuff. The game opens with Batman taking Joker to the asylum. When we make it to the asylum, we take a slow walk through it, come across Killer Croc, who's being taken somewhere in the asylum by guards, and take the Joker further into the asylum. Overuse of the word asylum. In fact, I'm going to put an asylum counter throughout this video. There'll be a counter in the bottom right corner. How many times I say asylum. Batman gets stopped by guards, and the Joker is escorted by a doctor and a guard, before he kills them both and breaks out, as Batman suspected he probably would. Joker then taunts Batman before disappearing into the asylum for Batman to give chase. Now we know how it begins, I'll just go through key plot points so this video isn't 4 hours long of me explaining Batman Arkham Asylum. Batman fights a Titan-infused henchman, thus confirming Joker has access to one of the most dangerous drugs in the Batman universe, usually used by Bane. Commissioner Gordon's kidnapped by Asylum guard Frank Bowles, and so Batman tracks Bowles using a trail left by his whiskey flask, and he finds his dead body, double-crossed by the Joker. Batman heads out onto the island and fights off thugs who are attacking his car, and finds Gordon's pipe, before tracking him to the medical facility, now in possession of Harley Quinn. I also realised I said Commissioner Gordon was in possession of Harley Quinn. That's a lie. Harley Quinn's in possession of Commissioner Gordon, because she kidnapped him. Not the other way around. That would be a bit weird if a police commissioner was kidnapping inmates on an asylum. Batman gets into the medical facility before taking down a room of thugs who've taken some doctors hostage. After the thugs are dealt with, we speak to the doctors and find out there are still 3 more doctors in the building. Dr. Chen, Dr. Kellerman, and Dr. Young. After rescuing the doctors and subsequently guard Aaron Cash, we meet back up with the doctors and find out Dr. Young needs to get to Arkham Mansion to collect her research notes. Aaron Cash escorts her there like a true gentleman. After some more thugs enter the room, we take them out and head down the elevator they came up. This is where we have our first encounter with Scarecrow, who preys on Batman's fears of failure and his parents. After defeating Scarecrow, we find Gordon and Quinn and eventually rescue Gordon, before we find Bane strung up by tubes taking Titan from his body. Joker cuts him down and we fight Bane. Bane calls Dr. Young Bruja, which means
it's Spanish for witch.
Batman heads to the Batcave built in Arkham, and Gordon leaves the island. After getting to the cave and finding out Dr. Young was developing the Titan formula for Joker, Batman heads out of the cave and into the sewers before scaling his way up the asylum's old viaduct and finding out Young was taking payments from Jack White. No, not that Jack White. One of Joker's oldest aliases. Batman heads to Arkham Mansion to find Dr. Young's notes. After working his way through the mansion and rescuing Aaron Cash again, we get to Dr. Young's office, but find the notes have already been taken by Young herself. Finding and destroying Young's notes with the explosive gel, Batman has his second encounter with Scarecrow, which really puts Batman on the back foot, as it makes him relive the night of his parents' murder. We then rescue Young from serial killer Victor Zsasz, and then watch her get blown up by a bomb previously planted by Harley Quinn, who now has Warden Quincy Sharp. Batman tracks Warden Sharp to the penitentiary, and we're introduced to a new type of enemy, the Lunatic, the more mentally unstable members of Arkham Asylum, as if killer clowns, giant crocodiles, and luchadors weren't bad enough. There's now lunatics. These enemies almost got Batman Arkham Asylum in serious trouble, as people took issue with the brutality Batman used against these clearly troubled inmates, but after pointing out that Batman's brutal with all villains, men, women, children, sane and insane, people stopped their campaign and Arkham Asylum was free to be released. Batman finds Sharp tied to a chair and we hear that the lunatics have been released along with Poison Ivy, who was released by Quinn. Batman finds Harley Quinn and fights some of her henchmen. She gets away, so Batman follows her and rescues two guards from being fried. Quinn runs again, but after catching up to her, we fight more henchmen and apprehend her before taking a party invitation list, which includes the names of some of Batman's more famous villains. Batman leaves the penitentiary and heads to the Botanical Gardens to find Joker's Titan lab. Batman finds the Joker, but can't get to him because of an electrified pond. After turning off the electricity, he continues through the gardens, and after rescuing some hostages, Batman finds the lab and fights two Titan-enhanced thugs at once, before obtaining a new gadget from the Batwing, the line launcher. Batman meets Poison Ivy before being told there's spores in the sewer that can counteract the effects of Titan. On the way out of the Botanical Gardens, Ivy takes control over the island as Joker has given her some of the Titan formula, so her plants have grown completely out of control. We head to the We head to the intensive treatment wing and meet Scarecrow for the last time, and grab some spores from Croc's lair, mix the Titan antidote in the Batcave, and stop Joker pumping Titan into the water. I should also add in that Scarecrow was seemingly eaten by Killer Croc. Yeah, no, that's right. Batman just let Killer Croc eat Scarecrow in front of him. He just let him dive into the water with his body and eat him alive. But, you know, he's not really dead because we never see the body, right? He's fine. After that, we head back to Ivy before fighting and ultimately beating her. We get an invitation to the visitor centre where we fight a Titan-enhanced Joker, beat him, take back control of the island, and we see Batman heading back to the mainland to deal with Harvey Dent, also known as Two-Face. Well, that was a long read, but now we know what we're working with, we can start to make changes, so let me outline what I'm adding in. So during the development of Arkham Asylum, a couple of iconic villains were cut from the game, including the Mad Hatter and Mr. Freeze. So my plan is to incorporate them into the game in the most fluid way possible. It might not be the best way, and I'm in no way saying I'm a better writer than Paul Dini, but it does a job and packs more substance into the Asylum. I'm also no dialogue genius, so unless I specifically say they say a certain thing, just use your imagination, do your best Kevin Conroy impression, and roll with it. So, let's get into the rewrite. So, in my rewrite, things would stay largely the same until the penitentiary portion of the game. After tracking Harley Quinn to the penitentiary, Batman would eventually lose track of her, and knowing Dr. Young's notes are gone, and there's no way to mix an antidote together himself, because in this universe Batman is slightly less smart, he'd be told by Oracle that Mr. Freeze is being kept in the penitentiary. We see his cell in the main game, so I'm sort of using that Easter egg, and that's kind of what inspired this whole thing, really, and we're making it a part of the story, because it's my rewrite and I can do whatever I want, and if that's involving Mr. Freeze, that's what I'm going to do. We use a similar technique we use in Arkham City to track Freeze down, and we come to his cell, where we're promptly interrupted by Harley Quinn. And we get the same three electrified floor flight. The fight with the three electrified... The fight with the same electrified floors, and there's three of them. It's on screen, you know what I mean? I'm keeping this fight because it was always an encounter that stuck out to me whenever I'd replay the game, and it's a fun fight. It's a nice change from the normal sort of combat encounter. After the fight, we apprehend Harley Quinn like usual, go into Mr. Freeze's cell. Oh, and we also get the party invitation list with all the villain names on. We'll add a couple of villain names on there. We'll put Catwoman, Condiment King, and Polka Dot Man on there. We talk to Mr. Freeze, and Batman says, Mr. Freeze, I need you to help me create this cure, or people are going to die. Joker is going to kill a lot of people, and you are the man who I'm going to recruit to help. Mr. Freeze goes, yeah, I don't like Joker. I will help you if you give me my suit and free reign of the Asylum's medical facilities to keep working on a cure for his wife. Batman sort of goes, free reign? That's a... yeah, maybe, yeah. Yeah, okay, right, I need your help, sure. Batman agrees, and he heads off to get Freeze's suit. By this point, Joker's thugs have completely locked down the intensive treatment where Freeze's suit is being kept. The player heads down into the sewers again, using the Batcave entrance point used earlier in the game. While going through the cave, Batman picks up the 3-hook grapnel gun, another tongue twister there, and we get into the sewers. We have to fight Croc in the same sort of fight as before, but this time it's just from one side of the sewer to the other, and you can still drop him down a hole using explosive gel. The player beats some thugs in a Predator encounter before boxing Freeze's suit up and calling in the Batwing to drop it off outside the medical facility. Batman has boxes because he has a bat box, and in this bat box goes the suit. The Batwing flies in, goes whoop, picks it up, ships it to the medical facility because he's Batman. Who's going to stop Batman from being a postal service? On the way out of intensive treatment, there's another combat encounter as you leave through the door you left through at the start of the game after finding Frank Bowles' body. But this time, it's overrun with thugs, and there's a few knife thugs, a few stun stick thugs, and you just beat them up and leave. The player makes their way back across the island to the Botanical Garden to find the secret Titan lab Harley Quinn told him about. And after taking down a few thugs and making their way through the garden, the player stumbles into a large hedge maze grown by poison ivy, who at this point has venom in her system from it flowing through the waterways. The maze is littered with the spore-shooting plants seen in the main game, and after taking down a few of Ivy's spore-shooting plants, we come to the centre of the maze, where a large table lined with thugs in rabbit masks sits. Batman's gassed by a plant and wakes up struggling to get a rabbit mask off his own face. We then have the Mad Hatter fight from Arkham City, but with a more plant-themed aesthetic. Again, I'm keeping this because I like it. Bring it from Asylum to City, no one's going to complain, everyone likes beating up Mad Hatter. After defeating Hatter, Batman interrogates him to find the location of the lab, but doesn't know. He tells Batman Poison Ivy knows, and he should hurry along to find her in that little voice he does where he's like, "Hurry along, Batman!" Working their way through more goons and another Predator encounter, the player eventually comes across Poison Ivy, and we have the same Titan plant fight as before. We beat Ivy and ask where the garden is. She doesn't tell Batman, but after a few threats to her plants, she tells Batman, and Batman heads off. The player heads to the labs and has another Predator encounter in the same room as the original labs, so this section again, largely the same. After opening the labs, we get the same fight and cutscene as before, with the two Titan thugs as Joker gets away with a handful of Titan. After the fight, Freeze comes on the radio and tells Batman the cure is ready. Here we also get the line launcher, and he can pick it up when he's ready to. Batman leaves the labs, and after another combat encounter, he comes across another garden maze. Now, this is where you'll have to suspend your disbelief. 2 garden mazes in the same section of the game. Bit overused, yes, but cool concept. I think so. I like it. So, we have to go through the maze again, and in the middle of the maze is a blinded Titan thug. And if any of you played Gears of War 1, you'll know where this is going. So, there's pheromones in the air and detective mode is blocked. The player would have to use their own hearing and stealth skills to sneak around the Titan thug to the other side of the maze. If the Titan thug hears you, it can just run through the maze wall and annihilate you. So the trick is to be as quiet and as quick as possible while still dealing with the spore plants from earlier. At the centre of the maze, I'd keep Hatter's table, but broken, and I'd leave Hatter's location unknown to set up his fight in city. So if you happen to end up in the middle of the maze during this encounter, you can sort of think, oh, where's Mad Hatter gone? He was here before, I knocked him out, but he's got up and ran off. So this entire encounter basically plays out like the Berserker fight from the original Gears of War game, where you have to use your own sort of skills and not rely on detective mode to get through this and not get ran over by this giant thug. I think this adds a bit of horror into the game as well, which I think Arkham Asylum is a very good game, but at certain points it lacks sort of the horror element I think they could have gone for, and I think ramping up the tension with this Titan thug would be a really good way to do that. After making your way out of the gardens, we'd have Batman head to the medical facility and collect the antidote. Sprinkle a Predator encounter in there to rescue Mr. Freeze. After rescuing Freeze, he tells us he could only create 1 vial of anti-venom before the thugs broke in. Batman thanks him and tells Freeze that he's got until the end of the night to head back to his cell, or he'll be back for him next. Freeze just looks at Batman and nods his head as Batman makes his way outside. After this, we'd have the usual fireworks coming from the visitor centre, and this is where we'd have the final confrontation with the Joker. We'd head to the visitor centre, and as we walk through the front doors, Batman begins coughing. We'd have the same cutscene as before, of Joker bragging and crying about how his plan was great, but now it's not, Batman's won, and this time, instead of injecting himself with Titan, you'd see sort of a green tint in his eye, sort of hinting that he's already done it, and he just starts laughing. Batman starts to begin slipping into a Scarecrow-induced nightmare, hinted at when he walked through the door and started coughing. He has to fight his way through an amusement park, which is obviously just the visitor centre in real life, while avoiding Scarecrow's gaze and fighting off clown-based thugs, sort of like a killer clowns from outer space sort of thing. After working his way through the park, we'd have to fight a fear-toxin Joker, a larger, more rugged version of the Joker, who we'd have to take down like Bane in the original game, but he'd be faster, do more damage, and he'd be able to take him down using a combination of the Batclaw, explosive gel, and the Batarangs. All of this while parts of the arena are being gazed over by Scarecrow. He'd keep moving around to keep the player on their feet, and there would also be maybe 1 or 2 other Titan thugs in there just to really show that, this is it, this is the final fight, use everything you've learned throughout the game to defeat the Joker. Better than pulling him down off a plinth or whatever it was, off the roof using the Batclaw while he's bragging to no one. Weird boss fight, the original, but I think this sort of, it gets the player more involved than punch 8 villains, pull the Joker down, punch him twice. He swipes at you. It was an awful fight, and I think this could be slightly better, and we get a better use of Scarecrow, because although Scarecrow was very, very well used, I want him in the final fight, because I think he's a very, very underutilized villain. Obviously, despite the fact he's the main villain in Arkham Knight, and plays a large part in Asylum, I think it would be cooler to have him feel more vengeful in Arkham Knight. And by using him as a villain in this, it kind of ramps up his anger toward Batman. After defeating the Joker by wearing his health down and hitting him with the explosive gel punch scene in the actual game, I think that's pretty cool, and the achievement name's cool, a Big Bang. Batman would snap out of the hallucination, and Joker would be knocked out, suffering from the side effects of light Titan use. We're only going for light, we're not going for full-on Joker's crippled from Titan, we are going for light. Which still makes sense for Arkham City, because his blood would, although it would be poisoned, it wouldn't be poisoned as much, meaning he'd be able to live longer throughout the game. Because I don't think the length he lives in Arkham City, I don't think makes sense. But if we knock his Titan use down to light use, so maybe he injects his leg with a half a syringe. Scarecrow would also try and inject Batman with more fear toxin, but after a short combat encounter with Scarecrow sort of standing in the background, Batman would snap his needles off and knock him out. I always wondered why Batman didn't just snap Scarecrow's needles, so that's how this is ending. The ending has Batman getting Gordon down from the chair he's strapped in and thanking him, before a call comes on the radio of a GCPD squad car saying a group of black-hooded ninjas has been seen across the Gotham skyline. Gordon asks Batman if he's alright, and Batman just nods before grappling up to the Batwing and heading to Gotham. We see different members of staff and guards taking control of the asylum and dealing with any criminals on the loose. We then see Joker getting wheeled into the intensive treatment, shaking and beaten, suffering from the effects of Titan as the lights in the asylum go out and the credits roll. And as for the Titan in the waterway, well, we will get to that if we do an Arkham City rewrite, which we might do or we might not. But if we do, that will play a big part in that. So if you want me to write Arkham City again, tell me to write Arkham City again, because it's hard, and it won't be a massive rewrite, because the story in Arkham City is very good, and if you change even the smallest part, I think the whole thing crumbles. I think it can be done, and I think the water will be a big part of that. So, that's it. That's how I would rewrite Batman Arkham Asylum. Now, is it perfect? No, it's not. There's probably some plot holes I missed that you can poke at, but I think it does offer a different spin on the original, and it changes the lackluster boss fight at the end to make it more fun, at least, because the last boss fight in the original game is not fun, and I think this is fun. And like I said, having Scarecrow play a part is a more natural and sort of fitting way to end his time in the game, being one of the more iconic villains in it. And Mr. Freeze playing a part is also something I think works, as we know he's in the asylum in the original game, so why not utilise his skills against the Joker, as the two have never really seen eye to eye. They've never had matching morals, obviously Freeze being a much more emotionally driven villain, whereas Joker does it because funny. He does it because he thinks it's really funny. So I think having Freeze as an ally also sets up Arkham City nicely, with Batman and Freeze working together a little bit there. So I think overall it certainly adds to the world building. Is it better than the original? No, because I think the original Arkham Asylum story is very good. It just falls flat at the last point. But I do like certain bits of it. I mean, obviously I'm going to say that because I did it, but I do like certain bits of it. I do like the utilisation of Mr. Freeze, Mad Hatter being sort of almost a side mission that you have to complete. So not a side mission, but you get the point. Almost like a small obstacle. Plays a part, makes sense why he's after Batman in Arkham City. Again, trying to get revenge on him. I think it all comes together quite nicely. And that's it. That is the first episode of ReWrites. If you have any questions, comment them, and I will answer, because I know there's certain bits which I know I should have clarified more on, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to figure them out and point them out, because if there's enough questions and enough interaction, I will do a sort of a follow-up explaining why I decided to do certain things. I might do that anyway, that sounds quite fun. So yeah, thank you for watching or listening to the first episode of ReWrite. All the gameplay in this video was recorded by myself. Arkham Asylum's a game I've played thousands of times. So it was a nice, easy playthrough of a game that I really enjoy. Although this playthrough, I need to add this on, this playthrough didn't go very well. I got beaten up a lot, which is weird, because I'd not to pat myself on the back too much, but I'd sound quite good at the Batman games, and I got battered, but that's besides the point. I'll leave some of the more embarrassing deaths at the end as like a bloopers reel, because there were some pretty bad ones. So yeah, thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next episode of ReWrite, where we'll be rewriting... No, I'm not going to say that yet, but it'll be a good one. Episode 2 is a big one. It's going to take a while, but we'll get there. Recording for it'll start as I'm recording this. Recording gameplay, because it's another game. I know I need to do something else, but recording gameplay for it will begin after I've recorded this. So we're getting there. Episode 2 will be out. It will take a while. It will be a big one. I'm not sure how it's going to go. So, and again, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you in episode 2 of ReWrites.